Well, all right, CMI family. I think that we should go ahead and get started today. And it's just really good to be with all of you and to see your smiling faces. And I just want to mention that last month we talked about what it looks like to be roundtable ready and creating those intentional spaces where leaders can gather and connect and begin moving in the same direction. And today we're going to take a practical step forward in how we serve the churches in our communities. And this month's training is called A Tool for Serving Churches, the Relational Health Assessment by Chris Thayer. And this tool is really going to help churches better tailor their programming to fit the needs of their congregations. And so, as always, we want to begin by inviting the Lord into our time together. And so I would just love to introduce to you Jenni Allen. Jenni is from the San Francisco, California area, and Jenni is doing a wonderful job serving marriages in her community. And we're just grateful that she's part of the CMI family. So, Jenni, would you open us in prayer today?
Thank you so much. I'd be honored to. Welcome from California in the Santa Cruz Mountain Redwoods. I thought I could open with a verse or a couple verses from my devotion this morning in Psalm 18. It says, "As for God, his way is perfect. The Lord's word is flawless. He shields all who take refuge in him. For who is God besides the Lord, and who is the rock except our God?" So, Lord, I just thank you that you are our rock. I thank you that your ways are perfect. I thank you, Lord, for the conviction that you gave me so many years ago to serve marriages. And I thank you for silly things like Chat GPT that led me to CMI. I thank you, Lord, that there is this amazing group of humans that serve you and serve marriage and have that same conviction. Lord, I thank you that it was your idea for marriage to happen, and that was your perfect plan, and that we can partner with you, the rock, the God of our salvation, to serve our communities and to serve marriages. Because, Lord, where there's a healthy marriage, there's a healthy family. Where there's a healthy family, there's a healthy church. Where there's a healthy church, there's healthy community. And so we just partner with you, and we're so grateful. We thank you for Chris and his dedication to making this tool happen. We pray that you would help us to learn how to use it and how it could be valuable in partnering with you and just making marriages healthier and healthier. Thank you for this time and everyone on this call. We love you so much, Lord, in Jesus' name.
Thank you so much for praying, Jenni. And I just love that story that you were led to this family through ChatGPT. ChatGPT, thank you for bringing Jenni to us. So I do want to let you guys know that today's session is going to be recorded. And so I'll be sending the link in a follow-up email next week, so you'll be able to watch this back. And also do want to let you know that we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our call where you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions directly of Chris. So today we are excited to get to introduce this powerful tool that really has been designed to help serve churches more effectively. And this relational health assessment is done so well. It's a tool that's going to provide meaningful insight into a church congregation's relational health, and it really helps them to better understand where they are and what will truly meet the needs of their congregation. And so today we're going to get a live demo of that and how it works. And our speaker today is Chris Thayer. And just to give you a little bit of information about Chris, Chris serves as the pastor of discipleship at Good Shepherd Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. He has served in pastoral ministry for over 16 years in a variety of roles, including life groups director and campus pastor. And since 2018, he's helped shape and support his church's vision for strengthening marriages, both within the church and across the broader Charlotte community. And that includes leadership in re-engage marriage ministry, as well as providing pastoral and premarital counseling for couples. And then Chris is also the founder of Next Step Analytics, where he partners with churches and ministry networks to better understand the health of marriages and discipleship within their congregations. And so his work includes developing tools like the marriage and relational health assessment and helping churches to really turn relational data into practical next steps for strengthening marriages and evaluating ministry effectiveness. He holds a Master of Arts in Christian Thought from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. He and his wife, Kate, have been married for 20 years and live in Charlotte with their two children. And we're just so glad that he has agreed to come and share this with us today. So, Chris, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much, Steph. It's been so great to be able to be with you. And Jenni, the redwood that's in the window directly behind you, uh, my first and foremost, my best ministry is to my family. And one of my favorite vacations that my wife and I ever went on was hiking through the Jefferson National Forest. And that redwood right behind you makes me think of that entire trip, which was so awesome. So thank you for that. Random random joy that is over your right shoulder. As Steph said, my name is Chris Thayer. I'm a pastor of discipleship and the founder of Next Step Analytics. And today I really am excited to share with you the platform that I've had the great privilege of being able to develop. But before I get to that, I actually wanted to share a little bit of why I am so passionate about measuring what matters in the church world. And the first reason for that really has to do with this number that's really haunting for me, and it's 1/3. And the reason that 1/3 is an incredibly haunting number for me is because during the 2020 COVID pandemic, approximately 1/3 of congregants across churches across the country stopped coming to church. We saw about 1/3 of the church walk out of the back door. And as a discipleship pastor, that really broke my heart. And I had a lot of conversations with other leaders across the country. And one of the things that stood out to me was how universally all of us were surprised by the reality that 1/3 of the church walked out of the back door. And as I thought about that, I realized that if we were surprised of that by that reality, then we don't know our people. And if we don't know our people, how can we effectively disciple them? And so I started asking a question: how can we better measure ministry? Numbers that most of us know easily about our churches, like attendance, are important, but they don't tell us the whole story or even the most important part of the story. So the question I have is, how can we not just measure our marketing effectiveness, which really is what attendance tells us, but instead, how can we measure our ministry effectiveness? The other reason that I'm really passionate about marriage ministry is because of what we've been doing at our church at Good Shepherd. We started almost 7 years ago now. We started the Beautiful Marriage Movement, which was this crazy idea that we had, this vision from the Lord that was like, hey, what if we tried to reduce the divorce filings in the 5 zip codes around us by 50%? What would that do for our community? How would that impact them? How would that show them the gospel of Jesus in an incredibly tangible way? And so I got really passionate about the idea of how can we reduce divorce filings. And we had no idea where to start with this vision, other than the reality that we knew we needed to figure out how to better equip marriages in our church community before we could hope to help the surrounding community. So one day we were sitting around trying to strategize for this massive goal and figure out how we were going to achieve it. And during that meeting, we all said, well, everybody knows that that so many of the people that get divorced because of finances in their marriage. So how are we going to handle that problem that we know is really important for marriage ministry? And so we immediately started to do what most churches do. What we really excel at is we thought of how are we going to start a program around finances to help with this beautiful marriage vision in our church. Now, we don't always think of starting programs this way, but starting a program at a church is incredibly expensive. I mean, you've got staff time to select and vet the curriculum. You've got volunteer hours. I went recently, about a year ago, I was at a service project with my daughter for her school. And we were cleaning up a park, and the person who was putting on that event said that they had just read a study that said that the average value of a volunteer hour is approximately $32. So $32 an hour for volunteer work. Regardless of whether or not that number is 100% accurate, volunteer hours are incredibly valuable. Then you have your building space, you have your promotion materials and promotion time, all kinds of things. And when you add all of that up, it starts to become thousands of dollars just to launch a program at a church. So, in this incredible moment of clarity, we said, wait a minute, let's pause for just a moment, time out. What if we actually asked our congregation where it is that they're struggling? Do we really know that our congregation is struggling with finances? Or is that just an anecdote that we have based on a bunch of articles that we've read that don't actually deal with our church? We assumed finances were the main issue, and so we were ready to build a costly financial education program, but we paused long enough to actually ask. We got 125 couples who were willing to give us some feedback about their marriage. And when we asked them to rate their marriages across 7 different areas that we came up with at the time, the data that we got was incredibly helpful for us. The assessment told us a much different story than what we were telling ourselves. For instance, the single strongest area in people's marriages was around finances. Our church told us in that moment that finances was actually the area of their marriage that they were struggling with the least. So we were getting ready to offer a program that nobody wanted, needed, or was going to come to. But I guess other than that, it was a great idea. And then we ended up learning that spiritual intimacy and sexual intimacy were the lowest 2 areas in our church. And that surprised us. The spiritual intimacy surprised us because we're a church. And so we didn't expect spiritual intimacy to be as low as it was. And then we were also just simply surprised that they said out loud that they were wrestling with sexual intimacy. We had an inclination that that was going to be a struggle, but we didn't expect them to be willing to say it out loud, and yet they were. And so all of that changed where our time, energy, effort, and resources went. And so rather than starting a financial program, we ended up leaning in heavily on spiritual intimacy and sexual intimacy inside of our community. And that led us to doing some of the most impactful programs that we've done for our church because we were actually meeting our congregation where they needed the help. And in all of it, even though we spent a lot of resources to be able to find out where they were in their marriages, we ended up saving a lot more resources on the back end by not doing things that we didn't need to be spending our time doing in the moment. So it was really helpful. So those 2 things really made me very passionate about measuring what matters, about actually finding out where our congregants are so that we can lean into the right areas of ministry so that we can understand whether or not what we're doing is effective. So again, about 5, 6 years ago, all of this led me to realize that we needed to improve it further, that we even needed a better tool. We started to think, what if instead of having just 125 couples, what if we were able to get our entire church to be able to tell us where they are in either their marriages or in their relational health if they're not married? What if we were able to target all that we do in a way that was really helpful? We knew that we needed a better tool. And we knew that we needed something that was quick. We needed something that was short enough for people to use during the time that they're already all there, which is Sunday morning. So we wanted something that we could do on a Sunday morning during the worship service. We needed something that was anonymous, where people felt like they could be honest without fear of being identified. We needed something that was going to be branded for our church because the church has credibility with a congregation. Survey companies do not. And so we wanted people to be able to trust us with their sensitive information that they were sharing with us without any fear of, again, of being identified. And one of the ways that we can do that is by having our influence be what's in their lives and not a survey company. We knew that we needed it to be for everyone. We must accommodate both marrieds and non-marrieds, especially if we were going to be doing it on Sunday morning. But this was also built out of a conviction that we understand, as I'm sure many of you do, that marriage ministry doesn't just start when people say, I do. It actually starts long before they say, I do, because marriages don't have problems. People have problems, and then they get married. And so if we can address that anywhere along that line, it's really incredibly helpful. Also, and this was the most difficult one for us to achieve, we wanted to provide tailored next steps. We thought, man, everybody's telling us in this assessment where they are. What if they didn't have to wait for us to respond? What if we were able to respond to every single person? Because we recognize that at our church, we have approximately 2,000 people that come to church on a Sunday, and that includes kids and everything. So if you take about, say about 1,000 adults in our congregation, they're all in 1,000 different places. And so how do we meet each one where they are and help them to take their next step? Not just a generic next step for the entire church, but a really individualized next step. And then how can we come alongside of them with that data on the back end to help continue to facilitate what God is already doing in their lives? So we wanted to have a personalized report with targeted resources right away, not weeks later. And we even wanted to be able to promote some of the programs that we were beginning to offer and get really good at offering. And so we were trying to say, hey, how do we not just tell the whole church that we have this program coming up, but be able to say, hey, your marriage is wrestling in this area and this program will help there. Rather than them having to go through all of them, they can go through the one immediately that's going to help the most. So we spent a lot of time with third-party resources. There are a couple of platforms that exist out there that essentially we had to come as close as possible to breaking to get them to work. And we had a subscription that was about $5,000 or $6,000 a year with a company that we were utilizing. But we started to run into all sorts of limitations with that, and we realized as we were doing this process, we also had a lot of churches that were really interested in coming alongside and doing the same kind of process. And so we realized that we needed a custom solution. And this is why I started Next Step Analytics, to be able to formulate that custom solution so that we could actually achieve what we were trying to do. And the good news that I'm really excited to share with you all today is that it's ready. It's not just ready for Good Shepherd, but it's ready for the church. And so I'm super excited to be able to share this with you. And rather than telling you more about the platform, the first thing that I want to do is actually give you an opportunity to take the assessment yourself. So I want you to put yourself as in the feet of a congregant, in the shoes of a congregant, and I want you to actually take this assessment. So grab your phones, scan this QR code, or if you'd prefer, you can take that short link that's on the screen and you can type that into your computer or do it on your phone. It is mobile first, so the best experience is on your phone because that's what people bring with them on Sunday mornings. And so we wanted to build it that way, but it works either way. So scan that QR code, and then I want to encourage you to answer honestly, and then answer as if you're responding to these questions for your church. And when you finish, keep that report open. And I'm going to give you I'm going to give you about 4.5 to 5 minutes to complete that. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to go through that report together. Excellent. If you're still wrapping up, that's okay. You can keep going. I promise it won't offend me at all. But as soon as you wrap up, after just a few seconds, what you're going to notice is that you're going to be able to have right on your phone and you're in your inbox completely anonymously. If you put your email address in there, you'll have a report that got sent to you. If you took it as a married individual, you're going to see one report. If you took it as a non-married individual, you're going to see a different report. Both of these reports start off with a great front page, and then after that, if you're married, you'll see your commitment level to your marriage and why commitment is important. If you're not married, you're going to see your loneliness level and why not being lonely is really important. Then you're going to see your score across 8 different dimensions. If you're married, it's going to be 8 dimensions of marital satisfaction. If you're non-married, it's going to be 8 dimensions of relational health, and there's going to be 7 for each one of those if you don't have children, as parenting is one of those in the 8. After that, you're going to see some steps on what you need to do to make use of the resources that are inside of the report. And then finally, you're going to see a couple of pages that are going to have uh, tailored resources, 3 resources for each of your lowest 2 areas that you scored in. Now, the reason that we only did 2 is because one of the things that we've learned is that if we give people too much information, they get overwhelmed and they don't take a next step. So we wanted to give people just those areas where they're most likely to take the next step in, those pains where they're likely to recognize the areas that they want to grow or need to grow in a little bit. And we wanted to give them specific targeted resources for that. The resources that are there, we'll get to this in just a little bit, but all of that is completely customizable to the church. So you're able to put your own programs in each one of those areas. If you don't have any programs in those areas, that's okay. There's a list of generic resources. Some of them might be books, some of them might be YouTube videos that anybody can use at any church that we've just recognized are really good resources. So if you're not sure, if you're a smaller church, you don't have the programming, that's okay. Resources are there for all of the areas, but you can change all of them for your church specifically. You'll also notice that there is some branding that says Next Step Analytics. That's only because you use the Next Step Analytics demo site. For every single church, they're able to upload their own logos and church names so that the report, as well as the assessment itself, all of it looks like it's coming directly from the church. Because Next Step Analytics, I don't want Next Step Analytics to be the hero. I actually want the church to be the hero, which is how God designed it to be. And you're the ones who have influence in the lives of your congregants. And so we want to equip you to be able to use that influence and use it well. So those are the individual reports. Now, we're really excited about that piece alone. And the fact that when you do an assessment on a Sunday morning, like we did at Good Shepherd, we did it about 4 or 5 weeks ago here, and we were able to immediately equip over 1,000 people with resources for them to take their next step in their marriage or relational health. And that is a massive win. But it actually doesn't stop there, because if we were to just give you an Excel spreadsheet with all of the data that all of your congregation just gave you, for people like me, your heart might flutter a little bit, but for people who are normal, that would be incredibly overwhelming and really useless. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to put together all of this information in a dashboard so that you could see very quickly where your congregation is, where they're struggling, and where you might be able to take your next steps. So I'm excited to be able to show that platform to you today as well. Let's see here. I'm going to jump right into it. So after you sign up for the platform, you'll be able to go into the back end, and right away you'll notice that you'll see a QR code and a short link. The QR code is and the short link go directly to your version of the marriage and relational health assessment so that all of the data goes right to your platform. As soon as somebody finishes taking the assessment, within a matter of seconds, their data is uploaded right away to the platform. So, for instance, all the information that you all just gave is already in the Next Step Analytics demo platform. We could look at that live, but I actually thought it'd be more useful to show you Good Shepherd's data so that you could see where we as a church have just learned 4 weeks ago where we need to take our next steps and how quickly it was useful. So you see that, you can see there's places for you to add. This is where you add your branding, which is going to be your logo and your church name. You can adjust your subscription, you can adjust your profile, your billing. You can even invite other people to see the platform. So you can invite other church leaders to be on the platform. If you do that, they will only see the report and the assessment link. Everything else is not available for them, so that only one person is changing things inside of your platform. And then you can customize it, like I said, change all of those resources. It's super easy, which is so great. Just by way of context, in the generic sort of platforms that exist, for us to do this in that platform I told you about previously that we had tried to use, it took me about 4 hours, and there were 50 different locations that I had to change one resource anytime we wanted to change one resource. So the amount of time was just so inordinate. Now, if you don't want to use Basic Christianity by John Stott for your non-married spiritual health resource, you can easily go in, change any of the text. You can change what resource you're going to be using. You can hyperlink it to something different, and it all takes just a matter of moments, and all of that will immediately adjust to your church's resources that you use. There's also the engagement question. You'll notice that you got asked in the assessment that you took, hey, what programs from our church have you been a part of? All of that is completely customizable for you as a church as well. And I'm really excited to share what you're going to see when you put that information in. But you put the programs offered in, you select them as being either a married or a non-married resource or both. So for instance, Reengage for us is a marriage program. Regeneration is for both. So you put in all of those programs and all of that shows up in that engagement question. Due to all of the time and energy and effort that we spent on honing these questions in, we don't have the ability to change any of the other questions, but all of that is really intentional so that you get super actionable data right on the back end as well with questions that have been vetted over the last 5 years and validated. So in the report itself, this is where my favorite part. Immediately, you can see right off the front end the demographics. So Good Shepherd, we had just over 1,000 people who took the assessment. Median age is 52 years old. We had 43% of our congregation that day was male, 57% were female. By just so you know that the level of accuracy or precision that this provides for us is really high, because when we do it on a Sunday morning, the way that we recommend, we had approximately 95% of the adults in our worship service took the assessment, which is an incredible response rate. Whereas if we email something, the odds that we're going to get below 10% is almost universal. And then probably even below 5% would actually respond. So the fact that we can get up to 95% response rate because with who's in the room is massive for us. We can see our race distribution, our marital status. So we know right off the bat that 71% of our congregation is married. And then we break the rest down into other sections. So whether that's single, seriously dating, divorced, engaged, widowed, or separated. And so we can tell what percentage of our congregation meets all of those criteria. You can just begin to imagine if you're going to offer a marriage class for people who are engaged, we now know approximately how many people we're marketing to and how we're going to be able to do that. Like, so it's really helpful for us to just simply know those pieces of information. Then my favorite tab for discipleship pastors or senior pastors is right here where they are in their spiritual health. Median length of attendance is 5 years at Good Shepherd. The number of attendees that we had in the last 30 days was 49, and the number of new attendees within the last 12 months, excluding the last 30 days, was 109. So we know about what our response rate is now for, or our turnover rate is for new guests that are coming to our church. That's really helpful for us to know, particularly at the beginning of the year. We know where they are in their relationship with Jesus. 51% of our congregation say they have a solid relationship with Jesus. This is the number that always kicks my rear end just a little bit as a discipleship pastor. 33% of our congregation say that Jesus is the most important relationship in their life, which tells me that 67% of our congregation is saying that they have a relationship in their life that's more important than Jesus. And that's difficult to hear, but it's also really great to know, okay, this is where we are. This is where you are in your relationship with Jesus. 4% of our room does not have a relationship with Jesus yet. So we know that that's the percentage of people that we're talking to if we're doing a salvation call or something like that on a Sunday morning. Frequency of church attendance, frequency of program participation, all of that's really useful. And then what you all probably want to see the most is where is the marital health in our congregation. We have 731 people who are married that took the assessment. 23% of those have been married before. 41% have non-adult children. Overall marital satisfaction, commitment to marriage, and perceived spouse commitment. These are really important figures. Overall marital satisfaction has a very high correlation with whether or not you're going to get divorced within the next year. So that's one of the reasons why we have that. If we can increase overall marital satisfaction, we know that we're reducing the divorce rate. Also, there was a big longitudinal study that was done recently that said that it's actually the number that is more indicative of divorce is the your perception of your spouse's commitment to your marriage than your own commitment to your marriage. In other words, if you don't believe that your spouse is committed to you, the odds that you're going to get a divorce within the next year are pretty high. Where even if your commitment is high, but if your commitment is low and your spouse's commitment is high, you're less likely to get a divorce. Really intriguing data that came out, so we wanted to make sure that we added that for churches as well. And then we can see again, finances is the highest area of satisfaction in our church. So 73% is the number that they got for financial satisfaction. And sexual intimacy is still the lowest. What I call the big four: sexual intimacy, conflict resolution, emotional intimacy, and communication are all down there at the bottom. For those of you who have done marriage ministry with couples directly in the past, none of this will be surprising, but men on average rate each one of those areas approximately 10 percentage points higher. And women rate them lower. And this is pastorally, at least, this is almost always the case in my office. You know, the husband comes in and says, I don't know what happened. 2 weeks ago, my marriage fell apart, and now she wants to get a divorce. And she says, it didn't start 2 weeks ago. It started 2 years ago, but you weren't listening. And the reality was she wasn't communicating well and he wasn't listening well. And we see all of those kind of things borne out in the data, which is really helpful. Also, really intriguing for us is that the sort of popular sentiment that sexual intimacy is only an issue for men is not true. At least at our congregation's level, we're seeing that sexual intimacy is also a big struggle for women as well. We just happen to see that emotional intimacy, conflict resolution, and communication are much closer to the score of sexual intimacy for women. But for us, it is the second lowest for women, only behind conflict resolution. So lots of really important data for us there. And then relational health, this is for our non-marrieds. We saw a couple of things that were really important for us in this data. Almost 18% of them are single parents. We have overall relational satisfaction is fairly low. And then this is probably one of the most concerning numbers for us, is that their loneliness rating, a higher number would be better here. Their loneliness rating is actually really low and even below 50%, which tells us that the non-married people in our congregation are lonely. And so there's some work that we have to do and ways that we can come alongside of them. Also, and this is one of our massive takeaways from this data, financial health for our non-marrieds is the lowest. So while it is the highest for our marrieds, it is the lowest for our non-marrieds. Now, that's probably not much of a surprise when you think about it, given the amount of inflation that we've had since the COVID pandemic and those kinds of things, and how one-income households are struggling a lot more. However, we realized that, hey, we might have written off financial programs for our married couples, but now for our non-marrieds, this is actually one of the places where we need most to be able to offer those programs. So we're able to break down our congregation a lot better and know what the needs and the desires are of our congregation here. The last thing that I want to be able to show you as well is that earlier we talked about program participation, and I want to scoot down here to life groups because this is one of our big takeaways for us. So what you see here is what percentage of the people who are married, and then on the non-married tabs, it says what percentage of non-marrieds are involved in each one of these programs. So 38.6% of our congregations say that they are involved in our life group ministry. Overall marital satisfaction, commitment to marriage, and every single one of the 8 measures are all higher for people who are in life groups. Now, we don't know yet if this is causation or correlation. We don't know if life groups, if people have better marriages because of what's happening in the life groups, or if people with better marriages are going to life groups. But honestly, it doesn't really matter for us. The reason for that is we know that one of the best ways for us to improve the marriages of people whose marriages are struggling is get them around people who have better marriages so that they can learn those skills and those abilities from those individuals. And so we know now one of our big takeaways is that we need to get more people involved in life groups who are married. That way, we're putting them around couples who have stronger and healthier marriages. So really within the course of an hour, okay, approximately 20 minutes on a Sunday morning, we equipped 1,000 people with resources to take their next step in their marriage and relational health. Within the next 30 or 40 minutes, we were able really quickly to be able to look at this data and say, hey, we got to keep our foot on the gas of sexual intimacy. We know that we have a discrepancy between men and women that we need to help bridge the divide. We know that we need to get more couples involved in life groups. We know that our singles are very lonely and that they're struggling deeply with their financial health. Those 5 takeaways, we were able to really set up all of the major programming changes that we're probably going to make within the next year. We were able to do all of that and equip 1,000 people in about an hour once we had everything set up inside of the platform itself. And so the tool became incredibly useful and incredibly valuable for us as a church. So the next questions, let me jump back in here to my, so we just saw here, leaders get real ministry intelligence in the dashboard. And then the model is really simple: measure what matters, equip the congregate with insight, and then shepherd with intention based on the information that you get in the platform. And then what becomes possible next? This is one thing that I wanted to share with you all. I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek in where we're headed. So that's all of what you saw today is all available right now. And that's why we're excited to release it. But what's possible next? We are currently working on implementing longitudinal data, both at the individual and the church level. So when somebody takes the assessment and they put their email address in at the back end, all of that creates on the back end, it's all hashed so that no individual ever sees email addresses. By the way, it is completely secure and confidential. And but we added in longitudinal data, so they'll be able to see their changes over time if they choose to put in their email addresses. So if they took it 6 months ago and then today, they're able to see like, hey, this is where you were 6 months ago and here's where you are today. And you're able to see some of those changes over time. Maybe it's something that's dipping down a little bit and you realize you need to get back onto that train, or maybe it's something that's going well that you've been working on and now you're able to say, hey, this is actually really good that we've seen that change. We're going to do the same thing for the church data, for churches to be able to say, hey, this is where we were last year, or this is where we were 6 months ago, and this is where we are today. So we're adding in those trend lines when you have the assessment given multiple times as a church. And then finally, we're also, and this is something I'm really excited for you all as network leaders, is that we're building in a network dashboard. So what we want to do for all of our network leaders is we want you to be able to invite churches that are in your network to be a part of the data sharing that you all do with one another. Nobody ever sees any individual's data at all, but what this does is it pushes all of that church-wide aggregate data up to the network level so that you're able to see, hey, this church over here is doing really well in this area, and that church is struggling with it. And that church is doing really well in this area, but this church is struggling with it. When you know that piece of information, you can get those two church leaders into the same room and say, hey, why don't you all have a conversation with one another so that we can actually supercharge our efforts in the city? And this is how citywide transformation really can happen when we start getting on the same page with where are our congregation, what are the citywide struggles that we're dealing with, and how can we learn well from one another instead of working against and competing against one another. So the next big question that I get is, how much does all of this cost? For the church, the annual subscription is $500 a year. Our goal was to make this as accessible as possible for churches. We wanted to make this something that was really approachable, something that churches could definitely afford, particularly when it helps them to save as much money as it does. We could have gone with a white glove service that costs a ton of money for each service, or we could have gone really wide. And because one of my hearts and my passions is to help the church actually measure what matters, we wanted to make this accessible to churches. So for less than $42 a month, It promotes your programs, equips your congregation, targets your efforts. There's no limit on responses, and you can repeat as often as you want the assessment. And then for the network level data, annual subscription is $0 a year. We actually want to build this platform for our network leaders for free. We want to be able to help you to have valuable insight into the needs of the network in your city, and then help you facilitate conversations that improve your effectiveness for your city or your network that you're a part of. And so we wanted to give that to you at $0 a year, knowing too that you have a lot of influence in the lives of those churches. And so any way that we can further equip you is going to be better and more beneficial for the kingdom. So that is our pricing structure. And then finally, what can we do? You can scan this QR code here. If you'd like to have, your church or another church wants to get a demo of the actual platform and what it can look like and how we can serve them, they can sign up here to do that. You can actually sign up for a subscription here as well. And my encouragement for you all to do it would be this: if you sign up for the platform, to run the assessment at your own church congregation, review the dashboard and identify one ministry move to make next, and then invite churches in your network to do the same and compare what works. That is something that we've been doing with churches around us, and it's been so incredible to have those kinds of conversations. And whether you use this platform or not, my biggest encouragement for you all today is measure what matters. Measure what matters in your congregation. And it's not always the easiest thing in the world. Now with tools like this, I think that it is so much easier, but we really owe it to the congregations that we serve, to our King whom we serve, to do the best job possible. And the best thing that we can do is not stick our hand in the sand or rely on anecdotes, but instead to actually measure ministry effectiveness. And the work of marriage ministry is worth that effort. So if there's ever any way that I can help you all do that, please feel free to reach out to me. info@nextstepanalytics.org is the best way that you can get a hold of me that way. Or of course, you can always go to the nextstepanalytics.org website. You can submit a message to me there. So with that, I'm sure there are some questions or anything that I might have missed, Stephanie. Please let me know, and I'm happy to jump in from there.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. This has just been so incredibly insightful and so helpful to see it in action, and the tool for networks, that's just incredible. That's so helpful and so great that you're offering that so generously for no charge. So we really do appreciate you walking us through this today. And I know that we are going to have a lot of questions, and so we are going to make space for those questions. But before we go into our Q&A segment, we have a special announcement from Mr. Dennis Stoica, the founder of the Community Marriage Initiative Fund. And so, Dennis, the floor is yours, sir.
Great. Thanks, Steph. So as all of you know by now, really Carl's in my heart when we launched this whole Community Marriage Initiative Fund project was to build in self-sustainability for each of the organizations. And you can see we've worked in that area in multiple ways. One is we did the whole grant writing boot camp that many of you participated in, and we thank you for that participation. We've had presentations on other fundraising things. There's a resource that I became aware of about 9 months ago called Fundraising Masterminds. And I sent an email to Steph at the beginning of this meeting, and she has forwarded that on to all of you. So I encourage you to look in your inbox for that. And it talks about a training that's coming up a week from today at noon. So our regular Friday afternoon spot, it's going to be a presentation by a representative of Fundraising Masterpieces. Now and what their program is, it's called the Perfect Vision Dinner. If that name sounds familiar, that's because Amy talked about that process as part of her fundraising presentation 3 or 4 roughly months ago, whenever that was. She did not identify it by name, but after the Q&A, I asked her, I said, wait a minute, is that where this came from? And she admitted, yes, that is in fact the training that they participated in. And so about 7 months ago or so, I bought a seat at the training to learn more about it myself. And I've been impressed by what I've seen. And so that's why we're having the training available next Friday. Now, there's a couple of disclaimers. I'll read those from the email that I sent. Here they are. He said, here are a couple of warnings/disclaimers. Number one, next Friday's presentation might feel like a sales pitch. That's only because it will be a sales pitch. Get over it. Number two, the program is not cheap. In fact, they've got two price points, $7,000 and $12,000. However, the vast majority of organizations who participate in this training/mentorship, and it's both a training and a mentorship, it's not a one thing, a one and done. You travel with them for 6 or 7 months, or maybe it's 5 months, over a period of time where you're refining the approach. The vast majority of organizations who do that are able to raise over $100,000 during their first annual dinner. So you look at it as, okay, we have an investment of $7,000, we have an investment of $12,000, but if our odds are we'll get over 100,000, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But if this were an infomercial, at this point they would say, but wait, there's more. Because I'd really like to encourage at least 3 groups to do that, participate in the actual cohort. The next cohort starts at the beginning of May and it goes until September. What they say is get your year funding wrapped up during this period of time by putting on a Perfect Vision dinner. So to encourage groups to do it is I'm actually offering that the CMI Fund will provide a 25% scholarship for any groups that choose to do it in this cohort. So I mentioned 2 price points, $7,000 and $12,000, and Sean, the presenter, next week will tell you about what's included in each. But whichever you choose, the CMI Fund will give you a grant for 25% of that cost. Now, I'm looking for at least 3 to do it because we really want these 3 to be guinea pigs to say, okay, how does this work? We've seen Amy do it. It's been successful with her. We want to try 3 new groups and say, how successful is this in the marriage space? And that's why I'm offering that 25% scholarship. One of the spots is actually taken. Charlotte is probably, if they're on this call right now, they're going, well, wait a minute, what about us? We just signed up. Don't we get a scholarship? And I say, sorry, Charlotte, timing. Oh, no, Steph, you don't think I should do that? Okay. Charlotte, good news. Steph has advocated for you. And because Steph says we should go ahead and give you the scholarship, we're going to give you the scholarship as well. So again, I ask you if you've got availability next Friday to hear the pitch. Some of you on this call are not yet are not funded. So this scholarship is only available to groups that are funded or have been funded. So if you've graduated, you are still able to participate. If you're in the pipeline, you haven't yet get funded, I'd encourage you to participate in the training next Friday to learn about it and to be thinking about like, hey, might this be something we're interested in doing in the future? That's it for now. We'll now open up questions for either Chris or to me. And Chris, I do want to, my first comment on the thing, Chris, I'm real impressed in what I saw here today. What I'm about to say is going to be a surprise to some of you. When these folks actually turned in their first grant application to the CMI Fund, they asked for funding for this instrument. And I turned them down because, Chris, I had some sense of what was going to be involved in doing it. And I knew it was not going to be trivial. And so it doesn't surprise me when you say things like, yeah, I've been working on this for 5 years. Okay. And so you really have done a good job, Chris. And so thank you for persevering. Thank you for persevering in spite of hearing Dennis's no. And I think that's a real important lesson. I just want to take that for a minute. You know what? You will hear no's in your life. So what? So you got a friggin' no. Grow up. Deal with it. Do you believe in it? Take it to prayer. Is this worth doing? Even if it's Dennis that says no. See, Chris didn't know enough about me to know that if I said no, then he should be discouraged. He didn't know that. So he persevered anyway. So even if it's Dennis that says no, if you believe in it, take it to prayer and persevere. I read a book back 100 years ago. Okay, may not be that old. It just feels like this. It was a sales training book. It says this: the sale begins when the customer says no. And this is good salespeople. When they hear the first no, they say, "Oh, that's good. I only have 6 more no's to go before I get a yes." And so I salute you, Chris, for not just taking my no as a final. And a lesson to all of you that if you hear a no, all that means is take it to prayer, or it means, well, tell me more. I'll shut up now so anybody else can ask me a question. Thanks.
Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate that.
Anyone else have questions in the room today? See, we have a question in the chat. Bruce and Lita are saying this seems like churches would really benefit from doing this survey, and it seems very inexpensive. So yes, yes, it's a very low cost to be able to really guide your programming.
And you will get pushback on costs from some churches.
Yeah.
So even though it's worth it, some of them will say, ooh, $500.
Yeah.
Again, my message from before, deal with it, grow up, move on anyway.
Jenni.
I don't have a question, but I more wanted to say thank you, Chris. Thank you for presenting, but more than that, thank you for being persistent and committed to making this happen. I mean, I've done marriage ministry in my church for the last 8 years, and I can only imagine how much more effective it would have been if we had a tool like this to implement at the onset. So, unbelievable, amazing work. Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hey, can everybody hear me? Can I speak up?
Yes.
I don't know if y'all can
Yes.
see
Go
me.
ahead, Devin. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm sorry. I've been trying to log in. I literally could not log into the call. I don't know what was going on. I finally figured out how I got in, but I don't know what Chris has shared. I'm pretty sure what he shared because I've heard the talk around the assessment, and Chris and I worked on it together in the early days. And I can just tell you, I'm a marriage pastor at Good Shepherd Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also the president of Charlotte Marriages, and we at Good Shepherd, we've done this survey, this assessment a couple times, and I absolutely love it because, as I think it was Jenni just shared, it does give you such insight into the couples in your church. I think it's like I take a couple out for coffee and I want to ask them, hey, how's your marriage? And I really want them to be vulnerable and honest about the areas where they need to grow and the areas where maybe their strength, they're really strong in. And this assessment allows you essentially to be like, if I could take every couple in my church out for coffee and have a good 45-minute to an hour conversation with them, and they could be, noticeably vulnerable about where they are in their relationship. That's what you're getting in this assessment is you're getting this one-on-one conversation that's benefiting them, but then you as the church leader are getting this massive amount of data on the back end that's going to help you be informed about things like what programming should we provide, if we do a date night, what topic should we focus in on? If we do a series on relationships or even a series more focused on marriages, we could drill down specifically on the area that we know couples are struggling in. And Chris, I don't know what you shared, but I'll just share real quick. We did we had an event on a Saturday. Now, at Good Shepherd, we never have events on Saturdays, but we had an event on a Saturday. But we knew the couples in our church were struggling primarily with sexual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, and conflict to some degree, and emotional intimacy to some degree. And so we decided to hire Tony and Alyssa DiLorenzo, One Extraordinary Marriage. I'm sure if you've been in the marriage world, you know their podcast. But we hired them to come in on a Saturday afternoon from like 3 to 5. And I'm like, our families are busy. They've got kids and sports. They're not going to come on a Saturday. And I was hoping we would have 100 couples show up. And that was like going to be kind of a miracle goal. And we ended up having 158 couples show up on a Saturday afternoon because we knew that they wanted to come because we told them this is going to work on emotional and sexual intimacy and spiritual intimacy. And that's going to be our primary focus for this event. And we filled the worship center with couples because we knew we were scratching literally where they were itching in terms of their relational tension. And we met that need, and couples bought the book and they went home and read it. And that I've still to this day, I actually met with a couple weeks ago, and they said, the first time we ever really worked on our emotional intimacy was when you did that Saturday event, and we talked about emotional intimacy, and they actually had a deeper conversation than they had ever had. They'd been married 28 years. So again, I share that with you as a local church pastor who wants to impact marriages. And this assessment that Chris has developed has enabled us to do that to such a high degree of effectiveness that I've never been able to do in any other area of ministry in local church ministry. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Devin. That's awesome. Dennis?
Yeah, I just wanted to really push back on something Devin said. And Devin, I just got to say, I disagree with one thing you said. I just want to point that out. Is what you said is that you think that doing this would be equivalent to if you took every married couple out to dinner in 30 minutes and had it, you'd be equivalent. Yeah, I just have to disagree. I think this is much better than doing that. Because here's the thing. If I went out to dinner with you with my wife, and you asked us where we were in the area of sexual intimacy or emotional intimacy or spiritual intimacy, how honest would I be sitting with my wife next to me? And how honest would she be to you? No,
Not
no.
with your
This
pastor. Probably not with your pastor.
we're not that honest with each other, Devin. Truth be told. Truth be told. So what this does really with the anonymity, I really, I believe it really gives a better snapshot. So I just want to kind of reinforce that. And so I'm kind of teasing when I'm saying pushing back on what you said, David.
I
I do that
love
as a
the
way.
pushback, Dennis. I think you're absolutely right. That's
Yeah.
spot on. You're right, especially if people. I'm the marriage pastor at our church, and if couples sat down with me, they would not tell me about their sexual intimacy. There's no way they wouldn't be that vulnerable.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you're right. I agree with Dennis. I take back. I rescind my comment.
Oh, that's great. Does anybody else have anything they would like to share or any questions?
I've got a question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Is there any chance this is going to be in Spanish anytime?
Yes. So I'm not ready to make the full commitment as to when or how long. However, I am in preliminary talks right now with my developers as well as some organizations that are looking to do this in Spanish as well. And actually, earlier we were talking about the joys of ChatGPT now and how it's making finding even groups like this so much easier. Well, the good news is there's actually some really good AI tools that could allow us to port this over relatively easy to Spanish as well. We probably still keep the dashboard, things like that in English potentially, but at the very least, being able to get the PDF reports that go out to the individuals as well as the assessment itself inside of Spanish as well. So that's going to be our preliminary goal. And then hopefully to be able to get the dashboard in Spanish as well, long term is something that we'd love to see happen as well. But, if I continue to see desired interest for that, that is absolutely something that I'll continue to pursue. So thank you for asking that question, Calvin.
Yeah, awesome. Dave Jackson from Oregon.
Yeah, Christopher, this is great stuff. Thank you so much for all that you invested in over these last several years to make this possible and available. Love the networking emphasis. That interested in exploring that more.
Yeah.
Wondering about $500 a year is totally a wonderful price for most churches. I'm wondering, so we work with a lot of churches across our region that are 75 people or less.
Right.
Wondering if there's any possibility of our organization paying for something that a few different smaller churches could somehow make use of in some way. Is
Yeah.
that a possibility?
It is. It is. I was actually just having recently another conversation with another network leader who has a lot of really small congregations between the 50 and 75 range that are looking to do this as well. And so, yes, absolutely. If that's a conversation that you'd like to have for that kind of a specific need. At the end of the day, like my goal in my heart is to, as much as possible, get this out as wide as possible for as many as possible to make as big a change as possible. And so anything that we can do to facilitate that and have those kinds of conversations, I would absolutely love to have those, and see how we can make that work. So by all means, please just shoot me that message and say, hey, let's have a conversation about what we might be able to do specifically for those kinds of churches. 100%. Zero problems.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis.
Steph, why do you keep calling on me? I feel so harassed and badgered. I mean, give me some space. That's all I wanted to say. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So, Chris, I believe I saw your website was nextstep.org, and the .org is usually used for nonprofits. So my question is your organization a nonprofit?
Yeah, really good question. It is not currently a nonprofit. We had a couple of different ways that we could have gone, either for profit or not for profit. Given that we're working with nonprofits, it actually made way more sense at the time for us to launch as a for-profit. So we are a for-profit company. We're not a not-for-profit company. Thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it.
Disappointing in your answer, because I thought you would go that it was a nonprofit, in which case I was going to ask you to please prepare a $10,000 grant application on how I might be able to support you. But since we only support nonprofits, on the other
Understood.
hand, I'm also open to conversation with you about the possibility of possibly converting to a nonprofit. But,
Okay.
you never.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that very much, Dennis. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Anyone else have any questions or comments today?
Actually, one other comment, just based upon the last question that was reached, Chris, you just may want to consider the possibility of doing some sort of a tiered pricing thing that says, if your church has X number of congregants, it's $500. I don't know.
Right.
Pick a number. But, you have 500 congregants, over 500, and then be able to do a tier. I would think if you could do a tier that says, if you've got 100 or less, we'll charge you $100. Now, your challenge on that, Chris, is your cost to serve. In other words, every time you set up a church, it costs. So you'd really need to be looking to say, how can you automate that process? Like, how do you? And so again, happy to have a conversation with you about that as well, if you'd like to. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dennis. One of the other things, Steph, that I'd love to just share with the team as well is that when you do sign up, we wanted to make this again, as accessible and as easy as possible, and we want to make it as scalable as possible. So when you do sign up, we have a number of things that you'll get access to. We do have an entire playbook of lessons that we've learned about the best way to distribute this. We actually have sample stage scripts for you to use from a Sunday morning of how do you actually set this up for the congregation, the best time to do it, different things like that. So we have all of those resources, frequently asked questions that we'll typically get around how do we do this on a Sunday morning and what are best practices. All of that information comes to you directly when you do sign up. And Dennis, absolutely for that exact reason, so that we could keep the cost down as low as possible. We wanted to make it as scalable as possible, really figuring out how we could go instead of 1 to 10, we wanted to figure out how to go from 1 to 1,000 without a ton of additional work on the back end to keep the cost down as low as possible.
And I really would encourage the people. I mean, you can tell I'm excited about this. Actually, funny, Steph and I were having a conversation earlier today, and I was talking about the commercial I gave for next Friday's thing, and I said, well, I will try to overcome my usual shyness and speak up. And so she's got me really chatty Cathy today. I don't know. I'm blaming it all on Steph. Just blame all this. What I wanted to make is, you can tell I'm excited about it. I really would encourage the groups to take a pilot church, maybe your own church, and try this out. And then what I'd like is, Steph, maybe a month or 2 or 3 from now, maybe schedule another one of these where now it's a feedback that says, okay, if there's been 3 or 4 or 5 of CMIs who've actually done this,
Yeah.
how has it worked? What have you found? If Chris is real nice, we'll invite him to be on it as well, so we can hear it. But I don't know; it could go either way. I'd like to get the feedback on it. I mean, this is something, Chris. This is something that I am interested in scaling, because I think this Yeah, no, this is exciting. So great.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's great. We have a question in the chat, and it is as a network leader, how do we sign up?
Yeah. So as a network leader, the network platform is still being built out. So we don't have the sign up ready for that yet. As soon as that becomes available, I will share that information with Stephanie so that she can get that information out to you all. I'll also share out more information. Stephanie, I'll send you some of those kind of links
Yeah.
and the presentation if you guys would like it, whatever, so that you have access to all the things that we talked about today as well. But as soon as that becomes available, I will definitely be sharing with you that with you. The I actually just have been working with my developers, and we're finalizing all of the mock-ups for the longitudinal, or we're finalizing all of the data packages now for all the longitudinal data for both the individual and the church. And then the network platform is also being built currently as we speak as well. So I expect that to be ready probably within the next 2 months or so.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. We have a couple more questions in the chat. Amy from Maryland is asking, do you think a church would use this more than once a year?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. We've started to settle in on once a year for our regular rhythm as a church. And that's really because one of the things that we want to avoid is death by assessment. So we don't want to keep asking time and time and time and time and time again for more and more and more feedback. Now, we've done a lot to mitigate that by making the congregant the primary beneficiary instead of the church, which is really important anytime you're delivering an assessment, because you want the end user to be the primary beneficiary so that you reduce the sort of the unwillingness to participate. So we've done a lot to do that, but we've also kind of settled in on this once a year for us. Now, having said that, there are also other times where it can be really beneficial to do it multiple times a year. And that would include if you have a major initiative that you have going on as a church where you're trying to move the needle over a specific period of time, whether that's through the introduction of a new program or a new event that you're doing. Maybe it's even a sermon series where you say, hey, we're going to start off with the assessment here at the beginning of it. And then 6 months, 6 weeks later, when we finish it, we're going to see how we move the needle when it comes to these areas in marriage. So there are use cases where doing it multiple times a year can be beneficial. Or if your church chooses to use it this way, I don't always recommend it because you get the best output from a Sunday morning. But if you do choose to use it during a specific program for specific attendees, while you won't get the same snapshot level accuracy or precision that you would if you did it on a Sunday morning, the way that we're building the longitudinal data, you would be able to use this at the beginning of a program, say like re-engage, and you can give the assessment, and then you can give it again at the end of re-engage. And the way that we're building in how you select your time frame, you'd be able to select the date that you gave the first assessment and the date, and compare it with the date that you gave the last assessment. And that'll give you actually a really good pre-post that you can utilize for specific programs, which is the gold standard in understanding where you've actually moved the needle for programs, and get down to not just correlation but causation as well from your programs. So there definitely are use cases that are valuable with the way that we're building in the longitudinal data for doing it more than one times a year. The other question that I saw down there is, have you used it at a Catholic parish, or remind me the first? Yours will probably be the first, unless Charlotte beats you. I've been having a conversation with the Family Life Department in Charlotte, who's been potentially interested, but they haven't pulled the trigger yet. So you'd probably be the first, which would be really exciting.
All right. Well, this has been a really great session. I'm just so impressed with the tool that you created, Chris, and this is going to be so helpful for so many. So thank you for taking the time to share it with us today, and we really appreciate that. And just want to give you kind of a look ahead for next month. Next month, we're going to be continuing our conversation on roundtable events, and Carl is going to be covering beyond the roundtable, sustaining community impact. And so he's going to be really kind of diving deep into how to keep momentum going after the roundtable. and how to move great conversations into lasting impact in your communities. So be sure to mark your calendars for the third Friday of next month at noon Central Time for that. And be sure to mark your calendars for next week for the Fundraising Masterminds session. And then also, I just wanted to quickly make you aware of the NARMI Summit that is coming up July 8th through the 11th. The NARMI Summit is always such a powerful time of connection. It's encouraging. It's time for you to grow, and it's really a great opportunity to connect with the entire CMI family in person. And so you're going to find great sessions there and meaningful networking, and it's just a really good time to build relationships across the movement. So you can find details and the registration for that at narmi.org. And I just really encourage you to check it out and consider joining us there. It's a great time. And so if you guys need anything, or if you have any feedback from today, you can just reach out to me at steph@marriageinitiative.org. I really do love hearing from you. And as always, you guys keep an eye out for my follow-up email next week with the link to the recording of today's training. And I'll include in that email the QR code and the contact information that Chris has given, and the links for those things. And so just be on the lookout for that email. Thank you guys. We're so grateful for each of you.